The idea is what? Understand the idea of what's going on? Is that even though we love, sometimes we have a hard time like being able to actualize that what's going on over here. So number one, you got to be an expert. What's love? What is the definition of love? So only because of time, unless we have time. I don't know. Okay, so does anyone want to share with me what they think is a definition of love? It's hard to do this. It really is, to pin it down. But let's at least try to get close to it. When does somebody love something? Don't give me Rav Dessler giving. Don't give me Ahava and Hav. Don't do that for me. Right? It's true that you will come to love when you give towards something, but I'm not looking for that. You see, my question is, why would you even give to the thing in the first place? Right? You give to things that you already love, and then it builds the love. But my question is, why do you love that thing in the first place? Yeah.
Because you want to be unified with it in some way.
Why do you want to be unified with that thing?
You like it.
Say again.
Respect, caring. I don't remember it.
Remember what? What are you remembering?
There's another R word.
Reflexology. Yeah, what do you got?
A little extension of you.
Okay, that's true. Now, you find a lot of times with kids, when you're talking in particular of that, or even somebody else, it's much harder to do that though if they're not actually an extension of you. But okay, what else?
A feeling of strong or constant affection for a person. A person you love in a romantic way.
Yes, that is what I was looking for. Wikipedia's definition of love. Is it Wikipedia?
Merriam-Webster.
Oh, good. Okay, so look up Wikipedia. All right, so I'm going to give you an interesting definition. So the Rambam, Maimonides, speaks about this idea. And again, the way Rav Noach would phrase it was the following. Love is a feeling that one gets when they focus on the virtues of another. Think about it. Argue. Digest. Agree. Let's move on. Okay. So the idea is what? What is love? When do you love something? Essentially, when you focus on the positive of that thing. Which means, as crazy as this sounds, you can love anyone and or anything. Say again. Well, okay. Yeah. 3 days, 1 day. What do you? The idea is what? You can love anyone or anything depending on what you decide. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Now, if you don't have children, that's okay, but I think you probably were a child, right, at one point, I imagine. In which case, you might be familiar with this just from being the recipient. It's not uncommon to find that a mother or a father that's not from New York love their children, right? The idea is what they love their children, right? You find someone loves their child. Hold on 1 second. Does that child have any faults? Right? Who knows the faults more than anyone? The mother, right? And the father points them out, but the mother knows, right? More than anyone, the mother knows. But it's also the mother that loves that kid more than anyone. Why? Because a mother chooses to focus not on the negative, but chooses to focus on the positive attributes of that kid. And when she does so, now she loves him. What about the kid next door? Right? Can't stand that kid. Yeah? Has anyone here ever had a parent that said, I don't want you hanging out with Tommy. Stay away from Tommy. If your mother sounds like that, that's messed up. Right? Yeah, Mom, you okay? Give me another cigarette. Right? Anyway, the idea is that when you go ahead and you stay, look, I don't get it. What about the kid next door? Kid next door is any different? The kids are all the same. And this is why, if a person really wanted to, it's an amazing exercise, that if you take a person that you love or that you very much adore, you look up to, write down on a paper all their positive attributes. And on the same paper, write all their negative attributes. Even though people that you love, we know that people have faults. Write them all down. Take a person that you don't necessarily love, let's call it. Write down all their negative attributes. Let's start with that. Yeah? And then after that, write their positive attributes. Even though you don't want to see it, we know, even the people we don't like, they have positive attributes. It is not uncommon that you will find that the lists might be identical. And what is that you choose to focus on the positive as opposed to the negative. So how come a person maybe can't stand it? Is because what are we focusing on? So number one is you got to be an expert. 1 and 2 work together here. Number two is you got to focus, right? Now, what's the focus here? You got to focus on the result that's going to come from this relationship rather than the work you need to give in order to get to that point. Does everybody understand that? And let's talk about in terms of a dating relationship. When a person goes involved in terms of dating, if anyone goes into the relationship and dating thinking everything's going to be perfect and beautiful, so either, I don't know who you're dating, right? Or you're going to be in for a big surprise. And it is what? That there's always going to be things that are not going to be 100%, and that takes work, and that takes a focus. If you focus on the work it takes in order to be able to have this loving relationship, then many people would get rid of kids a very long time ago, right? I think for some of you who heard me speak about this in another shir, that I have a friend who, when he was getting married, he was told, one day you're going to have a baby, God willing. And when you have that baby, it's going to be so cute. You look at that baby and be like, so cute. And in the beginning, the baby's going to sleep, because that's what babies do. They sleep in the beginning. A couple days in, though, that's when they start to wake up. And one night, it's going to be like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. You're not going to be able to get this kid to sleep. And while holding this kid, you're going to look at your window. And you're going to look at the kid. It'll pass your mind. It'll be fleeting, but it will pass your mind. You're going to want to chuck that kid right out the window. So the guy says, I have one piece of advice for you. Don't do it. And that's now you know why we have Seirugim on the windows. Right? Why do we have bars? Yeah, you thought it's for thieves? Right? That's what, on the 90th floor, they're Seirugim. Like, what are you doing? Right? Now you know why Israeli kids are so tough. Because the parents try. Right? They hit the head. But the idea is what? If we would just give in to it's too much effort, forget it. But if we were to bypass it and focus on the fact of what we're going to get from this idea, then it's going to be that much greater. What's the counterfeit? What is a counterfeit of love? So to quote to you a cliche in reference to the class, but if you ever heard it, it will be new to you. There's a movie called Played Against Sam. Anybody see that movie? Anybody hear of that movie? I've never heard of the word movie. Okay, it's kind of like a book, but it's on a screen. It's not like a book at all. Anyway, the idea is that there was a movie Played Against Sam. Woody Allen, nice Jewish boy. And Woody Allen was once standing in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, otherwise known as the Met. And he walks in and he sees this beautiful woman. And she's looking at this painting. And he stands next to her. And he looks at the painting. And he goes, so, what do you see? Without even looking at him, she goes, I see destruction, darkness, a pit of nothingness. He goes, oh, doing anything Friday night? She looks at him and goes, Friday night, I'm going to kill myself. How about Thursday night? What's that called? Is that what we call love?
It's hope.
It's hope. You need hope. Hatikva, Shnat Alpayim. Right, the answer is what? That's called infatuation. Everybody get that? That's called lust. What's the counterfeit of love? You see, the Western world says love is blind. Judaism says bidyuk afuch, kafei ne'aman. Love is a magnifying glass. We see that there's negative, but we focus on the positive. And when a person gets involved in the idea of lust, and then they wonder, I don't get it. Why am I not getting an incredible feeling out of this physical relationship and out of this love? Answer is because it's counterfeit, it's not real. Now the good news is, we already know what to do, right? We already do stuff. We're already involved in physical things. We've all experienced some sort of love. Now all we got to do is tweak it a little bit. Tweak our focus, tweak our perceptions of what everything is about, understand what it means to be an expert, and everything changes. Number 3. What is a greater level than physical pleasure? What is a greater level than love? Now, I want to point out, for those who are thinking or haven't thought yet, but might think afterwards, what do you mean? There are people in the world that are willing to give up. They give up physical pleasure, i.e. all the money in the world, for their kids. It's true. But there are also people that are willing to take the money and get rid of their kids. And it happens. Right? It happens. Unfortunately, you have certain places in the world either of people who can't afford to even live, and they'll give over a kid, they have a lot of kids or whatever, in order to have some money to make the month even, right? It happens. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. That's not the question. It happens. However, everyone intuitively knows that they made the wrong decision. And they may make the wrong decision again. But they know that it is greater to have the child than to have the money. But we make decisions based off the moment sometimes, and even though we understand that the wrong decisions, we do it. Number 3, what's a greater pleasure than even love? Say? Mental. Good. Now, as mentioned before, and we're going to use it, understand, obviously, we're using our mental for all of this stuff, right? We're using our brains, we're thinking, right? That's true. But the idea goes like this. Let's take an example of, let's say somebody says to you, there are 1,000 babies in a room. This is a button which will detonate a bomb that will kill them. Either push the button or I will kill you. If you push it, you're off the hook. If you don't, you die. Please do not answer this if you're going to answer wrong. What would you do?
Luckily. You can express it.
Halachically, but who's that? Who? According to who?
What are the 3 things you die for? One of them isn't it?
Ah, you're in Kuflin Zayin, you're a Dea. Very good, but I'm assuming you didn't learn Nosei Kalim. Is that correct? Right. So maybe we'll have a shir on that in particular. Happens to be not so clear. Yeah? The idea of Shvichas Dam, Gilui Arayos, and Avodah Zarah, although you are right, generally, there are many details to that. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin talks about when you're dealing with a numbers game, and now that changes things. But putting aside the chas v'shalom, but putting aside Allah, chas v'shalom, but let's say, let me ask you, what would you do? My name is John Quinones, and I work for ABC News. What would you do? Would you push the button? I'm hoping, let me answer for you, you wouldn't push the button. Now, hold on one second. You just gave up all physical pleasure. You just gave up all love. What's this? This is what we call meaning. Purpose, meaning, doing the right thing. Doing the right thing is a lot greater. And by the way, these things can come together. It doesn't have to be always ultimatums. But my point is, if we want to try to find an understanding of what's greater, then we have to look at the extreme examples. So the idea is what? Being a good person, doing the right thing, is greater than all the physical pleasure and all the love in the world. Now, could it be people will sell themselves short? Sure. But that's not what we're talking about. What would we do? Necessarily even made mistakes. We're talking about what's primary in understanding of what's more correct and what you're going to get more out of. Okay, but now comes the classic questions. And perhaps what we're even doing here tonight to discuss the idea of happiness, the idea of chesed, the idea of giving, the idea of growing, what this whole thing is about. Doing good, being good. How do we do this? Now, you got to look at 3 things. How come there are people out there that are trying to live a life, we'll say, of meaning, but they're not necessarily getting that incredible, unbelievable feeling and that pleasure? Let's look at the 3 things. Number 1, you got to be an expert. What is the right thing? How many of us have clarity when we're making decisions in our life of what is actually the right thing? Let me ask it differently. Has anyone here ever had a lack of clarity on which way they should be going in a certain area of life? Yeah? Okay, one of you. Now, of the one of you, maybe you could be our spokeswoman, right? You understand, right? We've had times like that. What's that like? That's unsettling. It's very difficult. And even when we make a decision, if we don't really believe it's the right thing, so what do you expect you're going to get out of it? How do you think it's going to feel? Let's say we go to shul in the morning, but we don't really understand that it's the right thing to do, perhaps. So yeah, we're not going to get something out of it. If we don't fully appreciate and understand what we're doing and that it's the right thing to do, so we're not going to get it. Incidentally, if we were talking directly about happiness, I saw a beautiful definition. Rabbi Dr. Akiva Tatz in his book, The Thinking Jewish Teenager's Guide to Life, which is an oxymoron. So they changed it to life, I think. And that is what? What is the definition of happiness in its own right? Happiness is the feeling that one gets when they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. In other words, when you are in line, when it is aligned what you do and what you are supposed to be doing. When everything lines up. Good. Not only convinced, but also it actually is. Because if you're not convinced it's the right thing to do, so you're right, you're not going to get pleasure, even if you're doing the right thing. But when you understand it's the right thing and you actually live with that idea, nothing like it in the world. Going to Shachar 6 o'clock in the morning, if you would understand that's the right thing to do, and you'd appreciate what it's about, you'd be dancing to Shachris. It might be the crust of her eyes in the morning, but it would be some sort of dance, yeah? Ideas would be an amazing thing. So what is it? It's not the idea. You have to understand, what is it? Number one, be an expert. Number two, focus. Do you focus on the effort it takes to do the right thing? Or do you focus on what you will get by doing it? There's many examples of this. I just happened to have seen one on Yahoo's front page a bunch of years ago, where there was a fellow who found in his attic $40,000 in $100 bills. Now, everything was like, it was very strange. He had bought the house from someone that their father owned the house, and the father died, and the son was selling the house. And if anybody remembers, recently, there was a fellow by the name of Zuroff, I think his name was?
The Rav in Connecticut.
Yeah, the one who found $90,000 in the desk drawer. Now, that's a pretty wild story, and I don't want to downplay that. What's the difference between these two stories? That woman perhaps would have realized at some point, and then maybe come back for it. This guy was dead. No one is coming back for this money. The kids don't even know it exists. No one will ever know this money existed. But the guy went ahead, called up the kid, and said, I want you to know I found this money. He found it in World War II bullet cartridges that the guy had wrapped up and put into these things over years because he didn't trust banks. And the kids had no idea about it. $40,000 in $100 bills. Unmarked. Behind the dumpster. And then is what? But he called up and he returned it. Now, that's pretty difficult, right? I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. Maybe he was silly. Maybe he should have kept it. I don't know. But let's say it was the right thing to do. Can you imagine it was a challenge to give it back? If you focus on the challenge it is to give it back versus what you're going to get by giving it back, yeah, then you may never do the right thing. Number three is a counterfeit. What's the counterfeit of being good?
Being bad.
Being good.
Looking good.
Good. Counterfeit means it looks like it smells like it tastes like it, but it ain't it. Not being good, but looking good. I'll give you an example. Do not answer this question, please. Has anyone here ever donated? Do not answer this question. Has anyone here ever donated money to any sort of cause? Don't answer. Has anyone ever donated money, a significant amount of money? Do not answer this, please. A significant amount of money towards a particular cause. Perhaps an organization that you're at tonight. Now, if you haven't, you should. Let's move along. Now so what am I going to say? What am I talking about? How come there are people that will give tons of money to charity, but won't necessarily feel so amazing? You need to ask yourself, why did you do it? Did you do it to help the organization, or did you do it because you're going to get a plaque on the wall? I once was giving a class in Esha Torah, and there was 3 people came that day. It was a young couple of 75, and there was a guy about 85. I think I was 14 at the time. And I basically said the class was like about life. I'm like, let me tell you why you lived your life wrong. All right, here we go. Yeah. But before I started, the guy goes to me, "Hey kid, where you from?" This is before I started. I walk in the room. "Where you from?" So I said, "Where I'm from." He goes, "You know this building?" He quotes like a building. I said, "Yeah, I know that building." He goes, "I donated that." I was like, "Wow, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I know that. Sure." He goes, "How about this one? You know this building?" He says, "Another one." I'm like, "Yeah, I know it." He goes, "I donated that one too." He goes, "You know this one?" He says, "Another one." I'm like, "Let me guess. Did you donate that?" He's like, "No, my brother." But I donated part of it, right? Now, as the class went on, I got up to a point which is similar to this, and I was saying, when you give charity, do you do it for a plaque? And then I realized who I was talking to. And I was like, not that that's bad. That's wonderful. Because you can inspire others to give. I'm going to leave now. Goodbye. Right? The idea is what? Why do we do what we do? Do we do it because it's the right thing? Or do we do it because we want to look good? Are we doing it because we're going to grow as individuals? Or are we doing it because other people will think we're great? We're going to get a pat in the back. When others are looking, we're in. When they're not as much. Number one, you got to know what is good. Number two, you got to look at the effort. What are you focusing? And number three, not just looking good, but actually being good. Okay, number two. What's number two? Now, number two is a bit tricky. It's not that it's necessarily I give up number three for number two, but I like to look at it more as an extension. It's not the same thing. It is called creativity. Creativity means where a person is willing to go ahead, whereas being good is very nice. Being good, although, is something which comes along, which perhaps on a smaller scale, as opposed to taking a look and using something and building it to a large, grandiose. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Who gets more pleasure? The way I'm wording this doesn't make sense, but who gets more pleasure in war? The soldier or the general? Think about it. Why the general? Good. You see, because the soldier, what's he doing? He's following whatever the orders are. The general is also a soldier. But he's not just following, he's using his capacity to be able to go ahead and think of ways to make this actually work. I'll give you another example. Who gets a greater level of satisfaction? A doctor who administers a drug that will save someone's life, or a doctor that administers a drug that will save someone's life that they invented. Does everybody get it? That I go, one thing is when you're just doing what you're doing. It's being good. You are being good by going and giving a drug to help somebody. But when you're the one who worked and used your mind and opened up in a way to be able to understand, you go ahead and you're a doctor, or you open a hospital. Where we go, do we blow this out of the water? We're using our creativity. Number one is, again, you got to be an expert. Every one of us has incredible talents. Some of us recognize our talents more than others. For those who don't recognize, or even for those who do, you got to work to try to figure out, where do your talents lay? What do you have? We all have unbelievable capabilities. Number two is you got to focus. Don't focus on the effort it takes, again, in order to come up with the ideas, or the amount of time it takes, but rather focus on the result. I think it was Thomas Edison. Was he who invented the light bulb? Is that right?
Yeah.
So Thomas Edison, how many times? Anyone know? I think it was the 1,000th time he was trying that he made the breakthrough. Right? And it's something like, if he would have given up one time earlier, we wouldn't have lights. Or someone else would have become wealthy. But the idea is what? Is that if he would have focused on the effort it takes to use his creativity, forget about it. Let me get another job. But what does he decide to do? Let me focus on what's going to come from this idea. And number three, you got to be an expert. What does that mean to be an expert? What is the idea, the expert in creativity? I'm sorry, I said that already. What is the counterfeit? What is the counterfeit of creativity? Counterfeit of creativity is what we call control. I'll give you an example. Hitler, he was a creative guy, right? You got to be pretty creative to go ahead and be able to accomplish, if you can call it that, what he did. Is that right? Certainly was someone who was somewhat creative. But there's a difference between creativity and domination. Creativity, say again?
He's an art major.
Was it? But he wanted to do it. Okay, so the idea is what? He was a creative mind, so to speak, yeah? So the idea is, what did he do? It was a control, it was a dictatorship. It's I'm the ruler, a Stalin, a Castro. An idea where a person goes and says, I'm in charge, I run the show. Now, it could be that you get something out of that. When you have control over something, sometimes we feel good that we have control. But sometimes we feel miserable when we have control. Well, it's an idea of just, I'm in control, I run it, I'm the one. What kind of pleasure does a person get out of that? Versus someone who uses his creativity in order to have, so to speak, control. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to get a kid to go to bed. So you put your kid to sleep, and they get up. Put them to sleep again. You know where this is going? They get up again. Sleep, up, sleep, up, sleep, up, sleep, up. So you get some chains, you tie them down, you lock the door, you call it a night. Don't you feel great? You accomplished your goal. The goal is to get them to bed. Another way were to be, you read them a book. Again, and then again, and then you fall asleep and they leave the room. You've accomplished the goal that you finally get to rest. Or you don't fall asleep, but you keep it. You try little voices and stories and whatever, and finally they fall asleep. How do you feel the second time, besides unbelievably tired? You feel great. You accomplished the goal of getting them to bed, but it was through creativity and not control. So just because we're getting physical pleasure, and just because we have love, and just because we're involved in somewhat of meaning or doing good, and just because we're using creativity, doesn't mean we're getting anything out of it, because we might be living in the counterfeits. Last but not least, though, what is the greatest level of pleasure that a person can get? We're all out of time. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, so what is the greatest level that a person is able to attain? It's greater than all these things. I like to call this... Thank you for coming. So, what is the greatest level a person can get? What is the greatest level a person is able to get? Selfless. Spiritual. So it goes like this. I like to call this, I call this a wow moment. A wow moment is when a person experiences something that, sure, it manifests itself in a physical nature because we're human and everything's going to manifest itself physically, but it's otherworldly. It's not physical. I'll give an example of what I'm talking about in my wow moment. Is I once went hiking in order to go rappelling. Rappelling, you don't know what that is? Abseiling? Snappling. All right, for those unfamiliar, it's when you jump off a mountain backwards with a rope. If it doesn't sound normal, you're right. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, right? But the first part was good, right? That's when we were climbing up. Yeah. And when we get to the top of this mountain, it wasn't really the top because we were too lazy to go that high, but when we were halfway up, I was looking out over, it was around the Dead Sea. I'm sure many of you have been there and perhaps done this route. And when you look over it, to me, it's just like, wow. This is the real, not just what a New Yorker says, awesome, right? But it was really awesome. It was awe-inspiring. It was just breathtaking, not too much because you want to breathe, but it was like this experience of that you can't really put into words. Has anyone here ever had a wow moment in their life? Wow moments in our life. What are these moments? What are these things? Whether it's you listen to a piece of music. I once listened to a piece of music which also brought me to another plane. It was just, I'm a musician, so maybe perhaps that's why it touched me also, but it literally took me at, I was so touched by this. It was an Ozzy Osbourne song. but I kid you not, but it was beautiful. Right? If anyone wants to check it out, it's called Old L.A. Tonight. It was really beautiful. Nice piece in the beginning. F, C, G, A minor, standard, pero. It was just nice. Ring, very ring. It's the start, and it goes bing. I was just I remember when it was. I was in high school, and I was just like, and then turned into Crazy Train. But before that, when I heard it, I was literally brought to that place. A nice piece of art. You see a sunrise, a sunset, right? You experiencing a baby, whatever. These are things which are above. When you look around the world, there are certain things that are just above and beyond. When you look around and you appreciate art, what that means is you're appreciating the artist. Why do people want to go to book signings? Why do people want to meet? Why do people want to meet their favorite musician or whatever? Why? The answer is because there's something more than just the thing that was composed. There's something behind that. This was so amazing. Let me meet this person. People, if you appreciate the art, you appreciate the artist. We're looking at a world now. What is this idea, this wow moment? This wow moment essentially is when a person is connecting above and beyond this world. It's called transcendental, transcendence. When a person puts an example that you just feel above and beyond. Yes, this is true that it is connecting to the Almighty. And that is a little bit of a feeling. And when a person gets that I ask you, let's say someone has your feeling that would say, hey, I'll give you $100 for that feeling. You might do it because we make mistakes and we sell ourselves short. But the reality is, to take away that feeling, there's nothing greater than that. When we're in line, when everything's lined up, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're experiencing, we're looking at the beauty and the incredible, like the Rambam talks about, if you want to see God, just open your eyes. You want to go over B'nai B'chai also talks about Chovas HaLevavos. You want to see God, look at the world. Look at the world, see the beauty, see the incredible just symmetry, and just how deep and how complex, yet how simple everything is. It's unbelievable when a person feels that. And we get that, wow, there's nothing greater than that. I can't even put it into words. If you had it, you know what I'm talking about. So therefore, people, let's start over. Let's take a look at the entirety. However, here we got the idea. You got to be an expert. What is God? What's God? The person says, I've been trying to connect to Jesus for many years now. Yeah? Okay, but what is God? Number two is you got to watch out and focus. What are you focusing on? The effort it takes to develop a relationship with the Creator of the world? Or what you're going to walk away with once you develop that relationship? And last but not least, the counterfeit. What's the counterfeit of God?
Idol worship.
Spirituality.
Doctrination.
Nothingness.
So whoever said ego, and whoever said idolatry, this might be one and the same. The counterfeit of God is you. It's when you think you're the one who runs the world. And when you think you're in charge of your life. And when you think you have everything figured out. It's when you think you're in control of everything. At the end of the day, we say, I'm trying to connect to God, but if it doesn't work out, I'll take care of it. You understand? Okay, I know someone who knows someone. You know what I mean? I know someone. Lives in Jersey. Yeah? People, where are we putting our hope in? Are we putting our hope in ourselves? Or are we taking a look and saying maybe that there's something greater than us? Okay, so let's do a quick recap, quick rundown of everything that we did. So we started to begin to understand the concept of what everybody wants. This why Homer, it's only been 6 months. Answer the purpose of life is, well, we understand comes like what does it do best? Understand the concept of what do people do? Everyone's going for pleasure. Everything we do, every step you take, every move you make, we're not even stalking you. But the idea is what? Maybe I am. The idea is what? It's for pleasure. So the question is, how come we're not getting it? Why do so many depressed people? 35 ways, 800,000 copies? Out of control. What's going on over here? All right, so now we get a little further. Understand the concept of maybe to be able to confusing two things. It's what? Comfort and pleasure. Just because you're getting comfort doesn't mean you're getting pleasure. Understand the concept of what? Don't just run for the comfort, run for the actual pleasure. There are 5 of them. What if 5 loaves of Sefer Chinuch says written by or by the anonymous? And that's whatever their concept is. Number 5. Number 5. That's physical pleasure. What's physical pleasure? Any titillation, one of the 5 senses. Anything that touches one of the 5 senses, anything that's involved in it, that's the idea of physical pleasure. We're not talking about 3 things. Number 1, you got to be an expert. You got to be a connoisseur. If you want to be able to know what a picture is, understanding, you're going to stare at f-stop, you're going to do what kind of the aperture. Then you get to look at it's white balance, it's off, it's changing with the sunlight, and it's changing the and all of a sudden it changes everything, right? You become an expert. Number 2, the focus. What are you focusing on, right? Staying alive. Or you take a look and the whole thing in the concept of the person the other day, they're going to save their life. After that, number 3, they do watch for the counterfeit. It looks like it, smells like it, but it ain't it. Okay. Number 4, we said it's love. Love is even greater than that. People want to give everything when they have love. And of course, we've got to know what it is. Understand? That's number 3. Number 3's idea is what? Meaning, doing the right thing. When a person goes and connects to the idea of doing the right thing, I'd be willing to give them 5 and number 4. Number 3. Number 2, creativity is the extension. And when a person gets the extension idea of number 2, when we go not just administer the drug, we created the drug, actually brought the drug and saved so many people's lives. After that, we do wow. A wow moment like this. Right? A person goes ahead and they experience something which is above and beyond transcendence. When you feel that feeling, if you haven't felt it, when you feel it, you're going to know what it is. And you're going to say, like, I want to have that again. And you have to understand the concept of willing to give everything to get that. So people, what we're saying at the end of the day is really ultimately, let's try to do all 5 of them. Let's try to do all 5 of them. Live a life of physical pleasure. Enjoy it. Get a lot out of it. But don't get so caught up in it that you miss the idea that something called love. Live a life of love, but don't get so caught up in the idea of love that you don't realize what meaning is. Live a life of meaning, but don't be so selfish. Spread it out a little bit. Creative. Understand. Open up. Do all these things, but don't just do it at your own expense. And understand the concept of something even greater than that. So when we connect to something greater than us, the transcendence, it's incredible. So what is it when a person gets involved in the idea of physical pleasure? If I can quote a boss/colleague of mine, Eric Coopersmith, he said, if you go ahead and you get physical pleasure out of life, good. You can enjoy physical pleasure. And even if you do it properly, that's wonderful. But living a life staying stuck in physical pleasure, that's the appetizer of existence. When you go to a wedding, do you just eat the melon sprinkled with coconut? Or do you hang out for the main dish? Imagine the guy goes ahead at the wedding, he starts eating melon, he's like, oh yeah. So he takes more. And then he walks around when the guy's not looking because you don't want to see, the same waiter seeing you again. It doesn't look good, So you come from behind and it's like, where's that hand? And you just walk with him around so he doesn't see what you're doing. And you just pounded that melon. You go to someone like, wow, this was a wedding. Did you have the melon? Oh my goodness, the melon. It says, you idiot. Prime rib, if you're a vegetarian. Beautiful piece of lettuce. I mean, come on. You just stuffed yourself up. You could have had lettuce. Yeah? People understand the idea is enjoy physical, but don't just live with the appetizer. Go for the main course. Take them all. Connect with the ultimate. Any questions, comments, stories, jokes, attacks, please keep them verbal, non-physical.
Emotion.
Okay, people, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming. Hope to see you again. Thank you very much.
Can I just have everybody's attention for 2 minutes? Just 2 minutes. I want to thank RAV GAV for coming out. I want to thank you all as well. I know it was hard to find, like somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. But next week we have Rabbi Yontel Glazer. He's going, I forgot what the title was. Anybody here remember?
I'll give you a second. Keep going.
Anyway, he's going to be here next week. Same time, same place. February 3rd, we're having a Tu B'Shvat Seder. All the information about signing up is on our website, which we do hope. Thank you very much. It's called How to Be Constantly Grateful. That's Yom Tov Glazer next week. February 3rd, we're having a Tu B'Shvat Seder. You're all invited. All the information is on our website. That's www.YIBONEH.com. Also, January 25th, we're running a SHul hands-on experience packaging food at Yad Eliezer. We're going to be running many different types of programs like that, half days, full days, and whatnot. Also, just in terms of these forms, we left these forms by the front desk, or the desk outside. This asks you if you're interested in doing different type of volunteer work. Just for an example, during the last snowstorm, we had several families, old people, elderly, that needed help. We brought them raw food, cooked food, people running around. So like on a moment's notice, if we know what you're interested in, we could call on you. But obviously not all those things are emergency situations. But if you do sign up, we'd like to get you more involved, and that's the whole purpose of this seminar. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you all come back. Thank you very much.